By the summer of 1941, Germany controlled most of Europe. France was gone. Poland was gone. Denmark, Norway, Belgium, the Netherlands, gone. Britain was hanging on by a thread and couldn't do anything about it. Germany hadn't lost a major engagement since the war began. The Wehrmacht was the most feared military force on Earth. And then Hitler decided to invade the Soviet Union, the largest country on Earth, with the largest army on Earth, while still technically at war with Britain. While his own generals warned him it couldn't be done before winter. While he had a non-aggression pact with Stalin that was still active, he did it anyway, and it destroyed Germany. So why? To understand this decision, you need to understand that Hitler wasn't just fighting a war, he was executing an ideology. And that ideology had always pointed east. Hitler's core belief wasn't simply German dominance, it was living space, Lebensraum. The idea that the German people were racially superior and therefore entitled to expand eastward into Soviet territory, colonize it, and exploit its resources to fuel Germany's permanent domination of Europe. This wasn't a war aim that developed over time. It was the plan from the beginning. Every other conquest, France, Poland, the Balkans, was preparation for this one. In Hitler's mind, he wasn't winning yet. He was setting up. But ideology alone doesn't explain the timing. Because even if invading the Soviet Union was always the plan, doing it in June 1941, before Britain was defeated, before the Atlantic was secured, before the Western Front was fully stabilized, looks like recklessness bordering on madness. So why then? The first reason was fear of a Soviet first strike. Germany and the Soviet Union had signed the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact in 1939, a non-aggression agreement that divided Eastern Europe between them. But Hitler never trusted it, and by 1941, he had good reason to be nervous. Soviet forces were massing near the border. Stalin had been using the time Germany spent fighting in the West to absorb the Baltic states, parts of Romania, and chunks of Finland. The Soviet military was quietly expanding and re-equipping. Hitler became convinced, rightly or wrongly, that Stalin was preparing his own strike, and that Germany needed to hit first before the Soviets were ready. The second reason was Britain. Britain was still fighting. Germany couldn't invade across the Channel. The Luftwaffe had failed to achieve air superiority during the Battle of Britain in 1940, and without air superiority, an amphibious invasion was suicide. So Britain was a problem with no obvious solution. But Hitler believed that Britain was only continuing to fight because it was hoping for a rescue, specifically from the Soviet Union or the United States. Knock out the Soviet Union quickly, his reasoning went, and Britain loses its last hope of a powerful continental ally. A defeated USSR would force Britain to negotiate. The Western problem would solve itself once the Eastern problem was eliminated. The third reason was confidence bordering on contempt. Germany had just destroyed France in 6 weeks. France, a major European power with a modern army, had collapsed faster than almost anyone expected. The Soviet military, in Hitler's assessment and in the assessment of many of his generals, was in considerably worse shape than France had been. The Red Army had performed disastrously in the Winter War against Finland just a year earlier, struggling to defeat a country with a fraction of its resources. Stalin had purged most of his experienced senior officers in the late 1930s, leaving the Soviet military command hollowed out and demoralized. German intelligence assessed that the Soviet Union would collapse within 8 to 10 weeks of a determined German assault. 8 to 10 weeks. Before winter. That assessment, it turned out, was catastrophically wrong. But in June 1941, it wasn't an unreasonable one based on available evidence. Germany had beaten everyone else quickly. Why would the Soviets be different? Operation Barbarossa launched on the 22nd of June 1941. 3 million German soldiers crossed the Soviet border in the largest land invasion in human history. The initial results were stunning. Soviet forces were caught completely off guard. Stalin had dismissed repeated warnings of an imminent German attack as British disinformation designed to drag the USSR into the war. Entire Soviet armies were encircled and destroyed within days. German forces advanced hundreds of miles in weeks. By autumn, Germany had captured Kiev, was approaching Moscow, and had taken more prisoners than the entire population of some European countries. And then winter arrived. German forces were equipped for an 8-week campaign. They had summer uniforms, insufficient winter supplies, and supply lines stretched thousands of miles across hostile territory. The Soviets, fighting on home soil with the full weight of their industrial capacity shifting east beyond German reach, didn't collapse. They absorbed the blows and kept fighting. December 1941 brought temperatures of -40 degrees Celsius. German tanks stopped working. German soldiers froze. The lightning campaign that was supposed to end before Christmas became a grinding multi-year war of attrition against an enemy that could replace its losses faster than Germany could inflict them. Which is exactly what Hitler had always been told would happen if Germany got into a long war in the East. So why did he do it? Because he believed he wouldn't need to fight a long war. He believed the Soviet Union would collapse quickly, like France, like Poland, like everyone else. The ideology demanded the East. The strategic logic, however flawed, pointed east, and the confidence built by 2 years of easy victories made the risks feel manageable. It was the simplest kind of blunder, not a complicated miscalculation, not an intelligence failure. A man who had won everything decided that winning everything meant he couldn't lose. He was wrong.